Welcome to Play the Game. If you enjoy role-playing games, campaign design, and the thought process behind creating worlds, make sure to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow and reach more people interested in tabletop role-playing games. Last time, I divided science fiction into hard science fiction, soft science fiction, and science fantasy. Now, there are two caveats before we begin. First, these are critical terms used in the study of science fiction. I did not invent them. They are part of how literature and media critics talk about the genre. Second, I am not covering post-apocalyptic fiction or cyberpunk in this episode. Those deserve episodes of their own. I was also away from science fiction and indeed any form of role-playing for 20 years because of industry commitments, so I have either played early or played late. Today, we are diving into hard science fiction and how Traveller can be used to build campaigns where technology, economics, politics, and limitations drive the story forward. Because in science fiction, the question is not, how cool can this technology be, but the real question is, what happens to society because technology works this way? You've got to play the game. If you want to run hard science fiction with Traveller, one of the best places to begin is with the early setting material. Hard science fiction means to take physical realities and base the story on solving them. The 3 little black books are enough to start. You may also want to add Supplement 04, Citizens of the Imperium, for deeper character generation. Now, in this version of Traveller, ships top out at around 5,000 tons, which is a unit of volume. There are no aliens, and human civilization exists in a relatively small stretch of explored space. You could even make J drives among the technologies that don't happen because the PCs move through the solar system. This means that slingshot drives could be used for the inner planets. This would be similar to Cowboy Bebop, with the players being bounty hunters in space. But even with J drives, the setting is intentionally tight. This means you should understand where the bottleneck resources are made and consumed. Since there are only small ships, the bottleneck resources are tiny. Radioactives, which must be consumed at the point of source. Iodine, because life needs it, and it is also true of a key step in nitrogen fixing. The Rubescu enzyme is really inefficient. A ton keeps the photosynthetic life moving. The complex is a map which source enzymes use to run agriculture, energy to create fusion, and computer chips run industrial worlds. These will be made by governmental worlds. This means that Terra supplies the enzymes and radioactives to energy and agricultural worlds and gets back industry to Mars, Venus, and the inner rings of Jupiter's moons, and then receives the finished goods with only a few changes. So a cycle is formed. Seeds government, go to wholesale raw goods, go to finished goods, go to seeds and government. The one thing you could do is generate random subsectors for your campaign. This will tell you a great deal about the crunchiness of keeping planets and the variety of ways they are governed. You can generate a sector which will have more than enough planets for the adventurers to find out and map. Then use this website to get an isohedral map. Then on a Macintosh, if you use one, get screenshot and take a picture and making it full size. Then, instead of a galaxy full of competing empires, there are only a few explored sectors dominated by either the Terran Republic or the Terran Empire, depending on the period. The players will be in the movement of bottleneck commodities. And this creates a fascinating political question: what happens when a republic becomes an empire? More importantly, why would ordinary star-traveling player characters care? Would worlds break away? Would distant sectors reject the imperial authority? Would ordinary merchants, scouts, or soldiers suddenly find themselves caught between competing loyalties? That tension between political systems and everyday life is classic hard science fiction. Another point is to have spaceships that miniatures can move around in. This way, combat on a starship has a verisimilitude that the theater of the mind cannot match, and thus makes a good argument for large miniatures. This does not mean that the theater of the mind doesn't have uses in starship combat. The tension that comes with the theory of the mind is unmatched when you can't see where the other people are. Now let's move to the official Third Imperium. In the standard Third Imperium, the sectors are already in the map. But the actual world is more important. The government may say it is a religious dictatorship on a particular planet, but it is the GM who determines what this actually means. This is the traveler setting that most people recognize. Suddenly the universe becomes much larger. You have multiple alien species, massive political entities, thousands of worlds, endless campaign possibilities. A campaign could involve scouts probing the frontier, merchants taking contracts, traders trying to survive, investigators uncovering secrets on distant worlds. But underneath this lies a deeper GM question. Why do nation-states stay together? What is the logistics of space trade? In every culture, there is a large factor between the largest city and the second largest, and then a smaller gap between the second largest and all of the others. The largest city is a parasitic city and can then import more food and export more waste than is possible to support. The same exists in Traveler. For one planet in each connected network, it is possible to import more food and export more waste because the profit motive is so much higher for that one planet. There will be a second planet where there is enough to make it work as a subsidiary planet. Find out which resource needs to be imported, and find out which resources need to be most exported. This will tell you why the planet is central and able to support being a parasitic planet. In empires, this will often be the capital, because the leader is control of the flow of government. For example, Madrid, Paris, London, Moscow are all governmental centers for their empire. But in nations who have a democracy, the capital is not the parasitic planet, but the center of ownership of corporations is, such as New York. For example, Toronto is the largest city, and yet Ottawa is the capital. A capital will rise if it is the center of ownership. This means that out at the edges of empire, planets will exist which have no function in the center, but are rich for interpretation and PC's engagement. And equally important, why do nation-states fall apart? Oftentimes, one nation-state subverts others, such as the Third Imperium subverting rival states. Some regions are semi-independent but remain under imperial control. For example, the Sylvan worlds exist inside the Third Imperium while maintaining their own regional identity. Others exist as client states or partially autonomous governments. Still others are openly hostile. This raises a major campaign question. When does a system declare independence? What does a large power tolerate autonomy? When do considerations become inevitable? When does conflict become inevitable? Hard science fiction is often political science fiction. Traveler quietly encourages that. Things become more interesting once you add supplements like Book 4 Mercenary, Book 5 Harguard, Book 6 Scout, Book 7 Merchant Prince. At this point, characters stop being generic adventurers. They become people with deep institutional connections. A mercenary officer may owe loyalty to old comrades. A scout might be tied to frontier intelligent networks. A merchant prince may have debts, contracts, and political obligations. And suddenly, campaigns become much more complicated. Imagine this. Two worlds inside the Imperium are fighting. Technically, they are both loyal Imperial subjects, but neither side wants the campaign to escalate to an official Imperial intervention, so mercenaries get hired. Player characters are caught in the middle, or are mercenaries on a ticket. The challenge becomes, how do you finish the contract without attracting Imperial intervention? There are soft rules And one important hard-lit rule: do not use nuclear weapons, not because they are impossible, but because they are cheap, devastating, low-tech, and often destroy the population base. A nuclear exchange turns a world into a post-apocalyptic setting, and that changes the campaign entirely. That may be what you're looking for, surviving in a post-apocalyptic setting. Hard science fiction is about limitations. What can be done is less important than what consequences follow when you do it. Contemporary mongoose travel expands the possibilities even further. It takes individual sectors and large ways of moving about the empire and breaks them out into very detailed scenarios. Character careers are broader. Services also expand. Details become richer. But also combat works differently. Instead of using to hit tables for each kind of armor, there is a protection rating for each kind of armor and one hit table with armor from both individual armor and from cover. And the game world opens dramatically. Instead of imperial adventures, the vast range of detail makes other nation-states possible. You could run a campaigns inside the Aslan Hierate, the Soleimani Confederation, the Zordani Consulate. Each society asks different questions. What does loyalty mean? How much freedom do ordinary people have? What happens when society is stable but deeply unequal? This means you can do rescues on space stations, deep underground mines, or on distant megalopoli. Hard science fiction explores systems that ordinary people willingly participate in even when those systems are flawed, or they join the military and get sent off to rather distant places and do unspeakable things. Player characters often become desperate people trying to survive inside of systems that are much larger than themselves. Then there are different worlds based on different assumptions about the scientific universe collides with the real universe. Take a look at Hugo Award winners for insight. Traveler is built around one huge assumption. Information and people travel at the same speed. That sounds small, but it changes everything. A message can move only as fast as a ship, which means governments are slow, wars are confusing, rumors matter. Communication delays shape politics. Historically, this is true for most of human civilization. Important about moving at the speed of transportation, Traveler creates that world in space. But what happens if you weaken this rule? Traveler already hints at the possibility through misjumps. Sometimes ships may travel wildly farther than expected. Theoretical distance becomes larger, and once you imagine moving information faster than people, the setting changes completely. Think about the impact of the transatlantic cable. Europe and America suddenly became connected in hours' time. That reshaped economics, diplomacy, and power. Traveler changes dramatically if information outruns transportation. Maybe information only travels through known routes. Maybe infrastructure is expensive. Maybe communication networks are fragile. Restrictions matter. Another major question in hard science fiction is what makes biological intelligence different from machine intelligence? This debate is happening right now in the real world. Traveler allows you to explore it. Artificial intelligence means machine minds and synthetic beings. But hard science fiction works best when differences matter. Maybe machine intelligence thinks differently, and maybe it values time differently. Maybe legal systems treat it differently. Players may not know all of the answers, but the setting should. Hard science fiction asks, if minds are fundamentally different, how does society adapt? Low passage technology suggests suspended animation is short. Right now, humanity cannot really do this well, but hard science fiction often explores its consequences. Imagine characters frozen for centuries. A person from a forgotten war wakes up in a new civilization. Their culture is gone, the language is shifted, everybody they knew is dead. This works like 2001: A Space Odyssey, but there must also be restrictions. If low passage is easy, then why doesn't everybody do it? What prevents mass migration through time? This question has been asked since pulp era science fiction, such as Buck Rogers in the 25th century and parodied by Duck Dodgers in the 24th and a half century. Again, hard science fiction depends on constraints. Some people want to remove faster than light travel entirely. Traveler can explore that too. Imagine ships are not FTL, they move near the speed of light. Suddenly, time dilation matters. Consequences begin to resemble the Forever War. A soldier leaves for battle, returns home, and centuries have passed. Society is unrecognizable. This is what I call ultra-hard science fiction, because once faster than light travel disappears, humans change completely. Politics changes, economics change, relationships change, even memory changes. The scale of human dislocation becomes enormous. Another question that people often want to explore is, what happens if people stop aging? Traveler has aging rules for a reason. They create limits. What happens if technology bypasses them? How long do life extension treatments last? Who gets access? Why does everyone not become effectively immortal? And what happens to society when some people live for centuries while others die normally? What is the difference between immortal and immortal characters? Again, hard science fiction asks, what structures prevent technology from becoming universal? Because every technology advantage creates social consequences. What happens if technology bypasses them? How long do life extension treatments last? Who gets access? Why does everyone not become effectively immortal? And what happens to society when some people live for centuries while others die normally? What is the difference between immortal and immortal characters? When Traveler was first released, no exoplanets had yet been discovered. Today, we know they are everywhere, but reality turns out differently than many science fiction writers imagined. We have found many planets. We have not found an advanced technological civilization. That creates a different Traveler, a universe where humanity knows there are worlds, resources, habitats, but no great alien empires. Now, exploration becomes central. Mapping systems, surveying planets, finding usable resources, terraforming worlds, building colonies. A modern Traveler campaign could focus less on war and more on planetary engineering, which lies more in the direction of novels like Green Mars. Many exoplanets may be tidally locked, one side permanently facing the sun. One side is frozen in darkness, the other side baked in high noon. The habitable zone may exist only along a thin twilight-lit boundary. Suddenly, geography matters in new ways. Science matters in new ways. Players may need to be engineers more than soldiers. Scientists more than mercenaries. It becomes a very different Traveler. Not the Traveler your parents imagined, but one built around discoveries which we now actually have. Traveler is also surprisingly good for miniatures. Both personal scale and vehicle scale combat work well, especially once you add systems like Striker, which expand military operations. Hex maps become extremely useful, particularly for vehicles, aircraft, tactical positioning, combined arms engagements. Wargamers often love miniatures because they provide a concrete representation of terrain and forces. Traveler sits in an interesting space between RPG and wargame, and that makes it uniquely flexible. Some stay close to classic Traveler assumptions. Others require an entirely different hard science fiction ideas. Political fragmentation, artificial intelligence, frozen societies, immortality, information networks, slower than light civilization. The important question is always this: what is the thesis of your campaign? What technological assumptions are you exploring? What hard limitations define the world? Hard science fiction is about engineering, not just physics, The answers lie in the technological details, not just in the broad strokes. Because in hard science fiction, restrictions create stories. If you enjoyed this, like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. What kind of hard science fiction traveler campaign do you want to play? Next time, we'll explore science fiction role-playing and campaign destiny with soft science fiction in Star Trek. But he would think of something.